Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Nolan Dean. You guys know me on the internet, but today I am joined by a beautiful co-host and wonderful man from Manchester. Please say hello, Morgan Robinson.
Hello, hello, hello. It's me. You know me. I'd like to think you know me. If you don't know me, welcome to It's a Wonderful Podcast. I hope you get to know me soon.
I know you pretty well, and I hope the others get to
well.
know you good.
That is true. You do know me very, very well, actually. Very excited to kick off It's a Wonderful One, anyway. This is going to be a very interesting, hopefully kind of thought-provoking podcasting journey that we're going on. And who better to do it with than Mr. Nolan Dean himself?
Is it because I make video essays that you thought I'd automatically be thought-provoking?
Well, yes, kind of, I suppose. I think that's a nice compliment that I've just made there.
It's very nice. I'm very flattered.
Your video essays are very nice. Anyone who's listening should be going checking them out anyway.
And your Enlightenment Hour and Horror House were very thought-provoking to me as well. I've never given Suspiria as much thought as you do.
No, that's probably... I give Suspiria a great deal of thought, in truth. Yes, but we're not going to be talking about Suspiria today.
No, we're not. So we should explain a bit how this show works. We're taking movies from pre-1960, because those exist as well.
Yes, they do.
And we will be discussing them like how you guys may discuss a comic book movie or whatever blockbuster is being churned out at the movies nowadays. So it'll be really fun.
Not to say that we don't like a nice superhero movie every now and again. We don't want to come off as that. Me, big fan. Seriously. You know, people know I'm a huge fan of a nice superhero picture every now and again, but the reason for starting this was basically we felt that films of an age pre-1960 were just being forgotten about a bit in the not only in the sort of film podcasting world, but in the film discussion world, in the film fan world, because people, you know, you become a film fan when you're a child, when you're a teenager, and it's always easier to go and watch films from more recent because you're more sort of familiar with the whole concept in there. But we have to remember that some of the greatest films of all time came out before the year 1960, and just because they are in black and white, that's quote unquote black and white, or just because they are slightly old in terms of the concepts that are in there, does not discount their quality in any way. And I'm a big fan of, well, obviously I am a big fan of films from that era. Nolan's a huge fan of films from that era. That's why we're doing this. We want to discover these films as well, because we'll be talking about some films within this show that we've never seen before. And the way it's going to work is, obviously for this first one, we are doing Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo from 1958, as you've seen by the title. But from now on, it's basically going to alternate between who chooses what film we do per episode. So I might pick a film Nolan's never seen. Nolan might pick a film I've never seen. And I don't know. We could get into some really interesting discussions about first-time viewings of these old gems. And so it's kind of a discovery show for us as well, and I hope it is for anyone listening. But yes, we are doing Vertigo today.
So let's get right into that. Let's dive head first into Vertigo.
Head first.
Here we go. I told you I was going to come up with a punny intro.
Yes, you did. He's pulled through with his punny intros. Nolan, how long was it since you watched Vertigo?
Well, I saw Vertigo for the first time last summer because I think me and you were having a discussion about Hitchcock, and you were shocked, albeit disgusted, that the only Hitchcock film that I had seen was Psycho. And,
Yes.
I'd always wanted to check out a lot of Hitchcock stuff, and Vertigo seemed right up my alley because right around this time, our good friend Tom Bennis over at Odd Shape Channel, he was helping me get a bit into film noir, so Vertigo kind of eased me into that very well, and I was very impressed with it the first time I saw it, but looking at it through a second watch, I noticed a lot more other stuff that we'll get to into the spoiler discussion, but for now, Psycho is still my favorite Hitchcock movie, obviously, because I'm a book reader. But
Yeah.
Vertigo is something really, really special, and it's getting me more into a genre that I'm not too familiar with, which is kind of like this film noir-y thriller thing, because I always associated Alfred Hitchcock with horror, but seeing him take a movie like this, where it goes into like psychological obsession and using the color of green for anxiety, that kind of stuff really gets to me.
Yeah. I mean, to me, Vertigo stands kind of in a genre on its own. You mentioned it's a film noir. It's definitely got film noir elements in there. It's not literally, but dark enough to be a film noir and twisted enough to be a film noir. But it's that sort of mystery thriller as well. It's a psychological thriller as well. I can understand why anyone looking at Hitchcock who isn't too familiar with Hitchcock would see him as a horror director, because yes, Psycho is by far, I think, his most well known. If not personally, necessarily, I wouldn't. I love Psycho, but you say it's your favourite. It's not my favourite of his, but I'd still love it. Rear Window holds the trophy.
We had a big argument about that on Fan
did.
Friction.
Yeah, we did. Rear Window holds the trophy of my favourite Hitchcock. But Vertigo is a special film because it's very rare that a film has had the journey that Vertigo has been on in terms of the public, because when it was first released, it was quite frankly hated.
Or isn't that like every movie nowadays?
Well, critically, it was just not received well. And you can look back on this, it really, really wasn't. And I just think that is because it's such a bold, thought-provoking piece of filmmaking that maybe people who were used to Hitchcock, because you remember Hitchcock 4 years before 1958, obviously Vertigo came out in 1958, 4 years before he'd made Rear Window. Rear Window is equally as wonderful as Vertigo, but it's a lot simpler in terms of a story. But Vertigo does require some thought. It's why a second viewing is just can bring up so much more. And I studied Vertigo like far too in depth for a film course in college. So I think a lot of my points that I may make in this episode today will come from that. But yeah, you bring up, let's talk about this. You bring up anxiety in Vertigo, and I think that's a perfect place to start, because Jimmy Stewart, as an actor, Jimmy Stewart is quite a wholesome guy, quite a lovable guy. He always plays these really nice everyman type characters. People call Tom Hanks the Jimmy Stewart of today.
That's accurate.
For a reason. But Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo, Scotty, as he's known, is quite a despicable guy. He's an unpleasant man, but he's a very, very damaged man. And a lot of it does come from his personal anxiety and a hell of a lot of insecurity. I mean, you bring up anxiety, so shoot.
Well, there's a lot of movies I've seen that kind of play on anxiety. Mother last year was definitely one of them. Vertigo kind of does it in a way because when you're seeing the movie through the eyes of Scotty, you should probably know from the title, he's got severe agoraphobia, which means he's afraid of heights. And whenever this movie like does a shot over like a height, it just I believe it's called a dolly zoom effect. It might have been one of the first movies to use it. But it sort of makes you feel like that as well. I can only imagine what seeing this movie in a theater would be like, because I'm kind of afraid of heights as well. And from what I've seen, like on people who are breaking apart Vertigo and everything, they also mention the use of the color green as a way to have anxiety, because it's something that kind of sticks out from the rest of the crowd. It's making sure you notice it, and that's kind of like, I suffer from anxiety, and that's kind of a similar feeling, because it's like you feel like everybody's watching you, and like all this pressure is sort of crumbling inside. And Vertigo does that so freaking well, whether you're at the bell tower scene, whether from the opening, even when he's just searching after the woman in green, you feel a certain level of anxiety there. And I think that's what Hitchcock was planning to do with this, and for me, he absolutely nailed it.
Oh yeah, I mean, some of my favourite scenes in the entire film are the scenes after, and you know, we're just going to freely talk about Vertigo spoilers in this, by the way, because, well, it is a 60-year-old film, and people should have watched it. Obviously, people might not have watched it, and we might try and get people to watch it, but even though there's a pretty big twist in Vertigo, even though there is that, I think we're just gonna sort of freely talk about it, because I don't think it takes away from a viewing experience if you know that already.
Yeah.
So, not getting straight into that, but I do want to mention, after Madeline has supposedly died, and Scotty then meets Judy, who reminds him so much of Madeline, and the scenes in her apartment that are just flooded with green, and one of the best shots in the entire film is the silhouette of Judy's profile face just next to that curtain that is just neon green, with Scotty. Scotty's obviously, from the point of view of Scotty, you know, we are Scotty in that moment, just feeling so sort of insecure in himself, just like, wait, who is Judy? Is Judy real? Is Judy who I think she might be? Is it Madeline again? Because he's so enraptured by Madeline in the first half, and we'll get into why and everything. But I mean, it's a great shot, because I think it tells you everything about what Scotty is like as a character in terms of his insecurity, because the fact that she's in a silhouette even is she even there? Is she real in his mind? Because you don't see any sort of features. He's just seeing Madeline next to this blazing green background that's just like, you know, he's basically shouting at him saying, "Stop it! Stop doing this!" And yeah, I mean, there's a scene later on as well that we're going to get to when we go into the story a bit more, that is in her apartment, that is my favourite scene of the entire film. But why, since we've started on that, and we've kind of made it unclear as to what the actual film is about, Nolan, what is the film about?
Well, from the way I see it, there's a lot of ways you could look at it. You can look at it from the plot elements of it just being a mystery thriller about who this woman is and Scotty's past, but to me, I see it as a guy kind of overcoming his fear and analyzing like his psychological obsession with women that to him look like someone that he knows. And when you explore it from that character background sort of thing, like you mentioned that shot with the curtain, that's genius visual storytelling, and Hitchcock nails that in a lot of his movies, not just in this. And the way I I don't think this is a very conventional movie, if you know what I mean.
No.
It's definitely more an exploration of themes and character and how those interweave. It's actually, I find it quite hard to describe what Vertigo's about, if I'm honest.
I can agree there. I mean, to me, it is, I think in one sentence, Vertigo is an exploration of a man's incredibly insecure masculinity.
Oh, indeed.
Just impossibly insecure. But on the surface, Scotty has vertigo, right? He has vertigo, he can't go up into high places. We see this from the opening scene. An old college buddy of his hires him, because he used to be in the police, he hires him to follow around his wife, who he thinks is suffering mentally, basically. And this, Scotty goes and follows her and becomes sort of fascinated by her. And I'm not going to say any more yet, because there are just so many turns in Vertigo. But ultimately, it is just an exploration of his masculinity in terms of him wanting to be a hero and occasionally having these quote-unquote hero moments. I think of the scene on the beach.
Oh, yeah.
When Scotty and Madeline kiss for the first time, and the waves are crashing around, and it feels like the ending of a musical or something like that. It is very, very obviously supposed to be this very grand yes type moment, a celebratory moment for Scotty, but obviously we come to know that it's just all made up and it's just all set on. Like, the romance itself isn't, but the whole, Madeline isn't Madeline, and Judy is not Madeline but was playing Madeline, and it's all a very twisty type story. Kim Novak, of course, who plays Madeline, and Judy playing Madeline, both of them are the same person. Well, she's not actually playing Madeline. It's all very confusing. Yeah, but Kim Novak's great in it. I think she brings a very sort of almost a dreamlike quality to it. She kind of it's kind of a wandering aimlessly around the film type of performance, but one that just fits it really well. Because
that kind of fits into anxiety. Sometimes you feel like you're daydreaming, like, every time when you have social anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah, I bring up that scene on the beach that is Scotty's big hero moment. He also, of course, feels like he has another big hero moment right at the end. Ultimately, they just all come crashing back down on him.
Just like heights.
Which is, it's very sort of realistic in that sense. Quite brutal, really. The fact that, no, Scotty, you're not having any good things, because they just all come crumbling back down for you, which is why he's such a damaged character. Yeah, and all of that is personified in a way by those dolly zoom shots that you were talking about, that I call the Vertigo shot, or some people, like, when they're looking down from a height, I call them the Vertigo shot. When they're looking straight at a human being from an eye-to-eye level, I call it the Jaws shot. Because it's the same shot Spielberg uses when, Chief Brody is sat on the beach and notices the shark attack for the first time. It's the same technique.
Vertigo and Jaws, the beach cinematic universe.
Well, there's only one beach scene. Oh no, yeah, there's only one beach scene in Vertigo. Another hero moment for Scotty, of course, saving Madeline from when she jumps into San Francisco Bay. And San Francisco, by the way, has never been shot better than in Vertigo. Arguably Dirty Harry, which is another great San Francisco film. But I love the way San Francisco looks in Vertigo. It feels like a character in itself, just the fact that it's... Because San Francisco is a city, I think this is a really interesting sort of point. Obviously, with a film like Vertigo about a man with vertigo, San Francisco as a city is incredibly hilly, and some of the streets are at like 45-degree angles, going upwards and down. And I've been fortunate enough in my life to visit San Francisco, and if you stand at the top of one of these streets, because American cities are blocked, and San Francisco is a blocked city. But imagine Manhattan Island if Central Park was on top of a hill.
Jesus Christ.
And the rest of it was just downhill. There's a lot of hills in San Francisco, is what I'm trying to say. So the city becomes like a character in itself. The fact that Scotty is also terrified of the city and the way the city is designed almost because of his fear of heights. It's all very clever.
There's two scenes that speak to me a lot in Vertigo that kind of link to each other character-wise, and I'm sure you'll know this. One of them's my favourite scene in the movie. It's the bell tower scene about halfway through it.
Yeah.
That, if you want something that proves why Alfred Hitchcock was the master of suspense, that is one of those scenes. Like, he's just running up the bell tower, and then it ends with that woman falling off the bell tower. Mm-hmm. So Scotty, as someone you describe as like with hero syndrome, he fails then.
He does.
And then
he fails miserably.
And then right at the end, where he assumes that someone there is like gonna kill him or something, I imagine, but it turns out to be a nun.
What do you make of the nun? What do you make of the nun? The nun has always been a really interesting conversation that I've had with people. What is the significance of the nun? Because I have no idea.
I think it's something like, in Scotty's mind, he jumps to conclusions a lot, so he assumed that was someone who was going to hurt him, but the nun is sort of symbolic of, like, say maybe an angel or something, but it's sort of played off as, nah, I'm not who you think I am.
Yeah.
Then it ends.
It's always weird, because, in a way, because it's Judy who the nun scares.
Aye.
Judy's the one who screams when the nun basically comes out of the shadows. The nun stood in the shadows, to be fair, does look like the Grim Reaper. I noticed that.
It does.
But it is... Why, right. Number one, why is there a nun up there in the first place?
It's a bell tower.
I know it's a bell tower, but the place hasn't been used in centuries.
Maybe it's just like a lonely nun who was just wandering around.
I don't know. But it is the nun who scares Judy/Madeline. She then obviously falls right at the end to, we presume, death.
She has a Disney villain death.
She does. The nun just steps out and goes something like, God have mercy, crosses her chest, and the film ends. It's just like, why is it a nun? I like the idea of that you think that it's like an angelic presence. I like that, but
somewhat, yeah.
I don't know, because I've never been able to come up with a solid point of my own as to why it ends the way it ends with the nun. Like, to me, if the nun wasn't there and she'd have tripped on something and fallen, that's a better ending for me. Maybe she needed someone to scare her And the nun, because the nun looked so menacing when she was in the shadows, because you can't see her, you just see the outline of the hood and cloak and everything. Oh, cloak? Do nuns wear cloaks? Robe? I don't know.
Comment below, do nuns wear cloaks?
Yes, please, tell us. Do nuns wear cloaks or do nuns wear robes? We'll put a poll up. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to put a poll up right now during this recording.
Fantastic. I'm going to retweet this as soon as you do it.
Do nuns wear cloaks or do nuns wear robes? Hopefully now, if you're listening to this, you will get the kind of vibe we're going for with this show. We're not going to take it too seriously. We just like talking about these types of films. Okay, Vertigo poll.
We're not elitists, we're just two guys who like older movies.
Exactly, because older movies are great. Vertigo poll, do nuns wear cloaks or robes? Question mark. And two choices, cloaks, robes.
What if nuns retweet this?
Poll length, 1 day. Yes. What if nuns I don't know if nuns will retweet this. I don't think nuns will retweet this.
I think there's some churches that are on Twitter that might be happy to ask this question.
But they'll think we're being serious about it.
And then they'll come to this podcast and be like,
well,
what is going on?
If there are any members of the clergy listening to this podcast, welcome. Do you have any input on whether nuns wear cloaks or robes? That's the big question of today. I didn't think that was going to be the big question of today, I must admit.
And did you enjoy Vertigo?
Did you enjoy Vertigo? You've probably seen it. Oh, mind you probably haven't, because I don't think nuns and monks are allowed, lives. But aside from a weird tangent about nuns, what was the point we came up to there? I think the point was that you have actually got a solid answer for why there's a nun, and I really don't.
It's not even a solid answer. It's just something that I think it represents. Like, that's storytelling to me. It can represent different things to a lot of different people. Maybe the fact that you don't have a solid answer kind of reflects the idea that you don't really know if Scotty's a hero or not. So, it can work in many different ways.
Scotty at the ending, because the ending for me, I just focus on Scotty. So, Scotty at the end, he does what he wants to do, doesn't he? He does what it's all been building to, and he manages to overcome, albeit in quite a sort of violent and aggressive and kind of unpleasant way, because he's almost beating. Well, he's not beating. He's like pushing Judy up the stairs in a very aggressive way, and it is the most just like un-Jimmy Stewart thing you've ever seen, when he's just shouting at her, and I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all in terms of a character, although he's a great character.
It does work for his character.
It does work. It works perfectly. But he overcomes his fear of heights by doing that in the end, and manages to get to the top of the bell tower, just for the woman he has fallen in love with, to be scared by a nun. So it all comes crashing back down on him again, and that is how I see Vertigo above all other things. That is how I see Vertigo above all other things. It is the story of a guy whose masculinity is so insecure that whenever he does something that he sees as a success, it will inevitably come crashing back down.
Just like falling from a height.
Just like falling from a height. There is a lot of layers to Vertigo.
Just like Vertigo has onions and layers,
Vertigo
but not
has
cakes.
Onions. There's another comparison I didn't think we were going to make today. The comparison between Vertigo and Shrek. Not that we'll be talking about Shrek. Shrek is not a pre-1960 film, Vertigo.
No, it's not.
Although only by 2 years. Do you know what also I love about Vertigo is the colour. Because it's that wonderful sort of 50s colour.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like, it looks kind of like a painting almost.
Yeah. Especially the scenes in Ernie's restaurant toward the start, when Scotty's first sent by his old college buddy Gavin Elster. He's sent on the quest of... Not the quest. He's sent to follow Madeline around. But the scenes in that, and again, you brought up green before. Ernie's restaurant is it's caked in red. Everything's red, apart from Madeline's dress.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just
stands out.
Very starkly green. And you notice in that scene, it's the camera in some of the shots. It's very... It's like it's point of view, but it's kind of... It's nervousness.
Yeah.
Because when she's walking out, and he's sort of looking at her, but it keeps sort of cutting to both of them's viewpoint, and she's looking away and he's looking at her, and then she's looking at him and he's looking away, and then while she walks out, he's looking back at her. It is that again is his own nervousness at wanting something that he either can't have or doesn't feel he deserves at that moment. And I think we've all been there in that sort of similar vein. But I love that as well. Say what you want about Kim Novak's eyebrows.
Oh, Jesus.
It's never
Christ.
bothered me, and I know it bothers a hell of a load of people.
I mean, you definitely notice them, but it doesn't bother me.
You do. They're very, very noticeable. But I love the colour. Because colour's so important in Vertigo. And, to make Vertigo with the sort of colour scheme of movies today, it wouldn't be as successful because you need that heavy, heavy colour.
So what you're saying is you don't want to see Vertigo in IMAX 4DX with you falling with the movie.
Exactly. Imagine Vertigo in 4DX.
That'd be terrifying.
Sat on one of these. It'd be awful, actually. No, don't do that. Don't do anything.
One more thing I love about this, and it's not even to do with the movie, but it's the movie's artwork and the posters and stuff. Yeah. It looks like a downward spiral, and that kind of works with the whole theme of agoraphobia and anxiety. A spiral looks kind of unsettling even when you look at it from afar and stuff. So that stuff I find really cool. And another little connection to something that we brought up before, Shrek is also green.
Shrek is green.
Maybe someone who made Shrek was just a big Vertigo fan.
I doubt it. Well, you don't know. Who made Shrek? I don't know who made Shrek.
Some guy from DreamWorks.
Yeah. But yeah, you bring up the designing of it. The most well-known, I'd say the most well-known film graphic designer, opening credits guy, Saul Bass. Did a lot of Hitchcock stuff. Did a few early James Bond opening credits as well.
That makes a lot of sense.
The weird spots on Dr. No that are just all... He did all that. Obviously, he did all the stuff with Vertigo as well, and all the sort of... what looks like a paper man falling during the dream sequences and that. And all the...
Paper, because paper could crumple up.
Flashing.
Just like the feeling of anxiety.
Exactly. It all comes round to that central anxiety theme. All the red flashing and neon green and neon in the dream sequences. That's all Saul Bass. There's a reason he's the most well renowned. He knows how to, or he knew how to convey what a film was going for in very, very little design.
Mm-hmm.
He never overcomplicates things.
I think if for the end with Vertigo, I would probably rate it 5 out of 5 bell towers. I'm not sure about you.
We're not doing goddamn ratings. Okay? This is how
That's why I said bell towers.
This is how I rate Vertigo. I like Vertigo a lot. That's it. That's it. That's it. It's not my favourite Hitchcock, but it's up there. Just because I think it wouldn't be as far up there. I don't think I'd appreciate Vertigo as much if I hadn't have studied it a lot.
You get that a lot.
Like 4 years ago or however long ago it was. My God, was it 4 years ago? It's ridiculous.
Morgan is getting old. His attitude is catching up to him with his age.
Yeah. But no, I honestly don't think I would appreciate Vertigo as much if I hadn't have studied it so much. I do want to bring up another one of, and arguably the darkest and most twisted of Scotty's quote-unquote hero moments, which is when he eventually convinces Judy to dress up as Madeline.
Oh, yeah.
And she comes out of the bathroom, and he's just, you have a shot of his face, and it's just like, oh my God, this is incredible. But then you go back to her, the music builds up, it's so dreamlike and magical. But you cut back to a shot of her, and she's in a haze. Like, it almost feels misty, and you still have the green, you still have a bit of red. But it's the haziness that I really like and just makes it seem so dreamlike. I think above the scene on the beach and the scene at the end, this is Scotty's definitive height of his own personal feelings towards his masculinity. Because I think this is what he believes masculinity to be. To have this perfect woman who you can just control. And obviously that's not correct in a sane person's mind. But Scotty is not a sane person.
I don't think any main characters from Hitchcock movies are sane.
Oh, God, no. But yeah, it's that scene. She comes out of the bathroom in that haze, dressed as she was as Madeline, and there's that spinning shot then where they're in an embrace, they're kissing, and there's that spinning shot, and it's so, like I said before, it is like the end of a musical because it just seems so dreamlike. That is a perfect scene to depict Scotty's feelings towards what he believes the perfect man to be, because he knows he's so far away from being what he wants as a man, and he thinks that is it, and it kind of weirdly brings up the idea of it brings up like a psychological idea, like a legitimate real world psychological idea. I don't know who it was. Probably Sigmund Freud, because who else comes up with psychoanalytical ideas?
That just goes to show how well this film holds up.
Oh yeah, but the idea of falling in love with the symbolic dead woman because she is a woman you can control as a man, and that is obviously the
It's quite terrifying.
The Freudian, height of masculinity. Like,
yeah, I get that.
You get that. I think that's what I think it's definitely saying that as well. That obviously that is an incredibly unstable thing to think. But so are a lot of Freudian things. I mean, he knew how to make people feel, especially men. He has a hell of a lot on masculinity, does Sigmund Freud. He knew how to tell men that they were horrible people. And he does that with this idea. It's an idea that's always fascinated me, because he literally dresses her up like she is a doll for him to use.
You're like giving me chills right now thinking about that.
I know, but it's true. Is it not true?
It is true, but
he dresses her up like a doll for him to use to satisfy his own twisted idea of masculinity. And that is why I love that scene so much, because he thinks he is now there, and obviously it just all crumbles back down again when she puts on the necklace and he realizes that Judy is the same woman and she's not a different woman, and straight away it all comes crashing back down. Just
like
whether that
falling from a height.
Exactly, but whether that is Hitchcock himself telling us that, I don't know, that this idea of masculinity is bad and that we shouldn't aim for that. The fact that it comes crashing down, whether it's Hitchcock telling us that, because Hitchcock was a notoriously shifty man when it comes to relationships. Or whether that is just a thing that people have grasped onto since its release, because like we said before, it was not well received when it came out, but it has grown such a loving over the past 60 years and such an admiration.
Same with a lot of masterpieces.
Exactly. It sometimes takes a while for a film to be as appreciated as it deserves.
Definitely.
And Vertigo is arguably the example of that. Obviously there's a lot more, but I think, speaking of rankings, you will find Vertigo near the top of people's all-time list for a reason. You wouldn't have seen that in 1958, when if they ranked films in 1958, it would be in the top 10 worst movies of 1958 by whoever was a movie reviewer in 1958.
Can you imagine if they had
No.
what they have now, film vloggers back in 1958?
It wasn't a thing. There was no top worst, or I'd like to think there wasn't. But no, I think people back then were probably more like Scotty than they cared to admit.
Most likely, yes.
And I don't know if that offends people. I'm not trying to offend people, but I just think that sort of the idea of a man in the 1950s is a hell of a lot different to the idea of a man in the 2010s.
I'd say that's accurate.
So, watching it now, I think you can criticise Scotty more, and that therefore makes for a better film, as opposed to maybe what would have been almost seen as a more conventional romance film in the 50s. I mean, to call it a conventional romance film is very, very steep, but hopefully people understand what point I'm trying to make there.
I completely get where you're coming from. It's a product of its time, but the message still works today.
And I think that is going to be quite similar with near enough every film that we end up talking about on It's a Wonderful Podcast. it's
Definitely.
a product of its time, but the message still holds true. And yeah, I agree with that statement entirely. Is there anything else that you want to say about this?
All I will say is, for a guy who thought that Alfred Hitchcock was a horror director and only wanted to watch Psycho and The Birds, Vertigo opened me to a whole new genre of film that I've never really given much care or thought to, and for that reason, I'm glad that Vertigo is as great as it is, because now I want to explore more of those movies, and that's probably what we're going to do on this podcast. So, thanks for introducing me to this, buddy.
Well, I introduced it to you last year. I didn't introduce it to you for this episode. Now, I think it'd have been a hell of a lot of a different discussion if this had been a first-time watch for you.
Definitely.
And that is what ultimately we hope to do with this show. It is because we'll have no idea what the other person's picked until Nolan tells me what he's picked for the next episode, or what I've picked for the next episode. It could be anything. I could have never seen it, like I said before. Nolan could have never seen it. And I think if we've got someone that loves a film so much and then someone else that has never seen it before, I think that'll be an incredibly interesting discussion. But we wanted to open with Vertigo because it's a film we felt like we could talk about quite well, and we both know fairly well. That is why we wanted to open the show with Vertigo. I'm thankful that you're thankful to me for introducing you to more Hitchcock than Psycho and The Birds, because you can go, one of my, I don't know if we'll ever cover this on the show, we may, Rope from 1948.
Rope's definitely one I got to take a look at.
I love that. That's wonderful as well. But, no, what was I saying? Vertigo. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're still talking about. But yeah, like I said before, I think it stands in a weird genre of its own. I also think I think that's another reason as to why the film itself is, was so mixedly received. Because I feel like the idea of a hybrid genre is not really a 1950s idea. It's almost like a late 70s idea. Things in the 50s, you had comedic films, you had epics, you had westerns, you had film noirs, you had thrillers, you had horrors, but you didn't really have a psychological thriller mystery mixed in with a bit of film noir, mixed in with a bit of romance.
Making something for everybody. Good old Hitch.
Good old Hitch. I think whether we'll call him good old Hitch is a different thing. He knew how to make a film. Whether he was a good man is another discussion.
Talented old Hitch, we'll call him.
Talented old Hitch. We can comfortably say that, I think.
Or just Hitch.
Or just Hitch. Hitch is what he's known as. So, do you have anything else more to say? Because I think we've said a good bit there about Vertigo. I think we've had a nice discussion.
I think this was a wonderful first episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast, and it was a wonderful podcast, and thank you for proposing this idea. I'm really excited to explore more of these.
Yes, the cat is now out of the bag. I did propose this idea, but this is equal parts me and Nolan. Don't forget that this is equal parts me and Nolan. We both care a lot about making this podcast a great one. We both care a lot about what we're going to be talking about. And why don't we finish with the always nice. Nolan, where can people find you? What are you getting up to? Where can they speak to you if they want to talk about Vertigo?
Mostly on my Twitter. You can find me at NolanDean27, or if Twitter's not for you and you're still one of those people who scours Facebook, come join Movie Talk by Movie Fans. I've just been made a mod there by the wonderful people like Jonathan Youngblood, Gaz Garcia, Ewan Brown, all those guys. It's a very fun movie page to be on when you're not scouring through a bunch of Marvel versus DC stuff. There is some great debate on movies like this and Vertigo and other stuff from before the 1960s. So if you like that, come seek us out.
Yep, I can attest to that as well. There is a hell of a lot of Marvel versus DC stuff, but you will find the odd nice old movie debate, which is always good. Movie Talk by Movie Fans is a great page.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me on the Twitters at the Purple Don with a 3 instead of the E in the. You can, of course, subscribe to the Purple Don YouTube channel where new episodes of the Enlightenment Hour are going up. That is starting back. I haven't gone anywhere. It hasn't died. Don't worry, everyone. So you follow me on Instagram as well. That is at the Purple Don. Or you can follow this podcast on Twitter at It's a Wonderful One to see when all the new episodes will drop. I think we're aiming for... I'm not sure when this episode will go up. I'll say that now. I'm not sure what day this episode will go up, but I know that every episode after this episode, we're thinking Fridays. So
yeah.
Look out for this on Fridays, or like I said, follow the podcast at It's a Wonderful One on Twitter. Subscribe to Nolan's YouTube channel as well, of course. That's just Nolan Dean on YouTube, is it not?
It is, and I'm writing a new essay now on it, so look out for that as well.
Yeah, he doesn't just talk about films from before 1960. He's very knowledgeable on a great many things, and he's a more than worthwhile YouTube subscription. So, Nolan, do you want to see us out?
I will see us out. Just as well, this podcast has not come crashing down. If anything, it's going way, way up. I don't know what we're going to be talking about next week because you haven't told me what your pick is.
It's my decision next week. I have the even numbers, by the way. I have the even numbers. Nolan has the odd numbers. That is how it works.
I wish I could say I knew what you were going to pick, but you
have no idea. You have no idea. I know what I'm going to pick.
You're like Poseidon. You're unpredictable.
I know what I'm going to pick, and I'm going to tell you after we've finished this recording.
Oh, am I going to enjoy this pick?
I would hope so. If you don't, I'll cry.
Please don't cry. I don't want to have a crying episode of this.
No. But, yes, Nolan has failed to see us out. Rather than making me laugh. But, yes, guys, please subscribe to this channel that this is on right now, because there'll be more stuff on here as well that you can look forward to. Be plenty more. Or on, of course, on the iTunes feed that this is also going to be on. Subscribe, rate and review over there if you did like this first episode. I'll get better with the plugs as we go on for this, I think. But, guys, I don't have a nice fancy outro. I'll let Nolan say bye, and then I'll say bye.
Keep being wonderful, and I'll see you next time.
Nolan has a nice outro. I think we're going to use that from now on. Keep being wonderful.
Let's
Keep being wonderful, guys. Keep being wonderful. Goodbye.